Welcome, everyone. I'm Roger Remington, a Vignelli professor, and I'd like to again welcome all of you to the Design Conversations lecture series. Our guest today has been an adjunct professor in the Visual Communications Design graduate program here at RIT and is currently involved in supporting programming in the Vignelli Center for Design Studies. She comes to RIT as Professor Emeritus from the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. Previously, she had been professor at one of America's premier graphic design schools, the University of Cincinnati, between 1973 and 1992. And in that capacity, she had been instrumental in figure in the emerging careers of a number of major American designers. An alumna of Yale University with advanced study at the School of Design in Basel, Switzerland. Her career has included many awards and grants, including those from SEGD, National Endowment for the Arts. And she's lectured at a number of national and international venues and exhibited her work widely. We're very fortunate to have a colleague of her stature on our faculty. I have known Anne for many years, and she is indeed a most experienced teacher and design professional, a major figure in the world of design education. It was my great pleasure recently to nominate Anne as the CIAS Visiting Scholar, and a delight to have her so honored in that position. Please join me in welcoming our visiting scholar, Anne Ghory-Goodman.
First of all, Roger is a treasure. He's a national treasure in the area of design education, design history, design archives, and you're very, very lucky to have him here at RIT. And I have been lucky to have the support and wise counsel of both Roger and Bruce Meter since I've been here. So I thank them. And now I want to start this talk. I didn't know really what to title it. It had a couple of different titles. One point it was Design for Good, one point it was Design and Social Responsibility, Design as an Agent for Change, Pursuing Passion, and those were topics that are hot button topics right now with professionals, and there's lots of published case studies about them, and even we have new graduate programs about them. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think meaningful work is. And I think that there's a moral and ethical dimension of good work. And we have to re-examine it as we re-examine our own self-image. I had a teacher named Dan Friedman who always insisted that you stand firm and refuse to work with people whose values don't match your own. But the purpose of this talk is to explore the themes that emerged in my own development as a photographer and a designer and a teacher. As a visiting scholar surrounded by masterworks from the history of design, I want to take the opportunity to probe what I feel is most needed to develop the next generation of designers. So the phrase that keeps emerging for me is meaningful work. Tonight I'm going to unravel what that means by defining meaningful work. Considering the examples of meaningful work and some new technologies, reflect on the role of heroes and inspiration, and trace the evolution of meaningful work, and illustrate what it might mean to teach young people using meaningful work as our standard. History is filled with examples of people who have inspired us to consider meaningful work. So throughout this talk, I'll include examples of calls to do meaningful work by many people from many professions. Here, Theodore Roosevelt said, "Far and away, the best prize that life offers is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. Howard Gardner, who is famously known for identifying the multiple intelligence theory, recently co-authored a book called Good Work, When Excellence and Ethics Meet. And he did this with two psychologist colleagues, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and William Damon. In this study, Gardner writes of his own personal struggle with the relationship between high-level performance and social responsibility. His team's idea of humane creativity evolved into the definition of good work as work of expert quality that benefits the broader society. So, I'm going to follow in Gardner's footsteps, and we're going to include the quality of the work in the discussion, the values of the people who created the work, and also how the work will contribute to the common good. And meaningful work changes the people who do it as well as the people that benefits, and meaningful work makes the world a better place and the maker a better person. We have an opportunity to experience work as good, and that is as something that allows the full expression of the best that's within us. For me and many in my generation, documentary photography was a path connecting fine art to a sense of social urgency. Compelling images by accomplished photographers conveyed expert quality while they illustrated dramatic and disturbing events. The contrast between the finest work we can make and the worst conditions we can imagine creates an aesthetic tension with a moral edge. With altered perception, we take action for change, in part to relieve this tension that these great documentary photographs will provoke. To explore this point, let's just look at a few iconic photographs in which an artist aims to bring hidden injustice to light with the added intention of making us confront social policies and that are perpetuating alarming conditions. Louis Hine was a photographer with a background in sociology. He was really horrified by the working conditions he observed in turn-of-the-century factories. And he was frequently hired by agencies that were committed to advancing social reform and to document these hardships with, especially with child labor. His factory images eventually led to legislation that changed our child labor laws. And Dostoevsky said something that resonated with me when I looked at this photograph. If one wanted to crush and destroy a man entirely, to mete out to him the most terrible punishment, all one would have to do would be to make him do work that was completely and utterly devoid of usefulness and meaning. So, though his good work had lasting effect, Louis Hine died destitute, and all of his prints and negatives went to a man named Walter Rosenblum at the Photo League in New York. And there are over 10,000 photographs by Louis Hine that are right here in Rochester now at the George Eastman House, so I hope you get a chance to look at them. In the 1930s, the Farm Security Administration's photography program revealed the hardscrabble lives of the Depression-era migrant farmers. For Roy Stryker, who was the program's director, the goal was to underscore the need for New Deal social reform. He wanted the photographs to do good, to educate, and to motivate viewers. Walker Evans, his photographs were transcendent depictions of desperate circumstances. They are perfect examples of Gardner's expert work that benefits the broader society. Another FSA photographer, Dorothea Lange, made iconic images of desperate poverty that also revealed social challenges resulting from the Depression. But her mandate from Roy Stryker was predictably sexist. She was assigned a topic list that emphasized cooking, sleeping, praying, and socializing. But the everyday act of haircutting gave another human dimension to the desperate Dust Bowl immigrants. This photo is part of a series in Life magazine called The Voices of the White South. It was photographed by Margaret Burke White, and it spoke volumes about that time and place. The Life magazine that I knew growing up is out of business. The source of the images that inform our worldview has now changed. Now the internet reaches broader audiences, but the underlying power of meaningful work to communicate about the human condition has not changed. Electronic media provide new vehicles for photography and design to document and share dramatic moments that move us to action. The world changes according to the way people see it. And if you can alter, even by a millimeter, the way people look at reality, then you can change the world. The internet can make world events instantly visible to a global audience, tightening the response time from outrage to action. This is actually a website that I created for photographer Peter Turnley, cataloging his career that took him through most of the tragedies of the last 4 decades. This is from one of his, this is the table of contents for one of his portfolios called In Times of War and Peace. But the purpose of this talk is also to explore the themes that emerged in my own development as a photographer and a designer and as a teacher. And I want to take this opportunity to probe what I feel is most needed to develop the next generation. Gardner stressed the need for heroes, the people who inspire us to do good. As teachers, photographers, and designers, how often do we put heroes and heroines before our audiences? Hine, Evans, Lang, Burke White, Turnley, they were all part of my education. They taught me to see and to care. Like Louis Hine, I actually majored in sociology in addition to art. Sociology added another dimension to how I observed the world. And like the ethnographic audience studies now essential to design research in a global age, the study of sociology disciplined my mind and my eye. At his death, Hine's archive passed into the care of Walter Rosenblum. Rosenblum was actually the person who gave me my first camera in a summer fellowship. And when I picked up that camera, I knew that was it. That was the medium that I wanted to use now to make comments about the world. And I also realized that the reason I knew that so quickly was because I had read a lot of Life magazines growing up. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. So I then brazenly took my summer portfolio to Walker Evans, and he admitted me into his class, and we famously argued about Dorothea Lange. I really liked Dorothea Lange's work, and Walker thought it was extremely sentimental and said that all her negatives were really thin and she didn't know how to make an exposure and she was pretty worthless. So, by standing up to a teacher and defending one of my heroines, I had to look more deeply into how to articulate what I value. 40 years after the FSA photographs were made by Evans and Lang, I worked for the Emergency Fund Service in Barberville, Kentucky, and my assignment was to support the fundraising by documenting conditions in these Appalachian hollers. In my own awakening, I found the face of rural poverty in many ways unchanged. Graphic design extends the inherent power of words and images. Paul Rand's covers for Direction magazine used designs to visually layer multiple meanings. This blood-spattered barbed wire was both a Christian cross and the wrap for a Christmas gift. The A suggested Auschwitz. The D for direction was a container for death. Today, poster imagery powerfully criticizes, exhorts, persuades, and educates the global audience, often wordlessly. Recently, designer Liz Resnick collected international posters for the digital age in her book and traveling exhibition called Graphic Advocacy. For Resnick, posters are a medium for social change, and they move beyond the echoing silence of the documentary photographs. They articulate our struggles for peace, social justice, environmental defense, and liberation from oppression. Posters are dissent made visible. They communicate, advocate, instruct, celebrate, and warn, while jarring us to action with their bold messages and striking iconography. Posters are a way for designers to display their commitment to society. This was a poster as part of the Hurricane Katrina poster project. And in Resnick's view, the poster remains the most resonant, intrinsic, and enduring item in the arsenal of the contemporary graphic designer. I think I'm going to show you more examples where I've broadened that definition, however. But posters do a good job of transcending language barriers with universal images that can be understood globally. Now, after the massive 2008 earthquake in Sichuan, China, it was estimated that close to 90,000 people were either killed or missing, and 10,000 of them were children. The recovery effort was overwhelming and exhausting and grueling. In fact, this is one of the few times that China requested international assistance. The Regional Graphic Design Association in Sichuan responded by asking the worldwide design community for posters to express support and hope for the search and recovery workers. This was my wordless contribution. And German designer Getz Gremlich's poster reads, "Hope for Sichuan, buried in pale green chrysanthemum petals." If you talk to a man in the language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. A few weeks after the disaster, the artist Ai Weiwei visited the region and photographed all of the devastation. And this led to a series of art installations trying to make visible the enormity of the loss, particularly of the children. And he used children's backpacks to create a crack-like serpent through the ceiling of the Brooklyn Art Museum. And in this installation, there was this terrible tension between the beauty of the installation and the horror when you realized that these scales were actually backpacks representing children who had been crushed to death by their shoddily constructed school buildings. Ai Weiwei went on to exploit new media and political messaging, and he did this in a TED Talk as well. I think of Helen Keller saying that whatever you do, you can do something. And though he faced many odds, he did many things. Now, architect Maya Lin has made memorial institutions a social commentary. And here we see this medium for socially responsive art stepping outside of the frame and into the environment. Lin's message about war was potently expressed in her Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington. She refused to list the dead alphabetically, but rather prolonged the experience of recalling Vietnam by listing the casualties based on the day of their death. Organized that way, the numbers of names reflected the fluctuations of losses as fighting intensified and deployment surged, and the tapering of death as the war wound down. For viewers, this meant that the names of comrades with whom they had served were named together in death as they had been in life. And the memorial continues to evoke visceral emotions about loss and war. Lin is now working on a new piece, and it's called What is Missing? The piece she calls her last memorial. And it's using new media to bring attention to the loss of biodiversity in the world with the hope of reversing the environmental crisis. So she's gone from 3D to 4D. This is her explanation in her voice of how she transitioned from that memorial to her interest and concern in biodiversity. She constructed a website, and it uses an interactive map to show the past, the present, and the future. So if you click on a dot on Manhattan, when you're in the past mode, you will see 6-foot-long lobsters as they were described by the Dutch settlers. Then another dot in the current mode would show in the same place where seals have returned to the harbor following the 1970s Clean Air Act. Her design for social good becomes dynamic, interactive, and experiential. New material is constantly added through crowdsourcing. Lin's project is demonstrating the potential of interdisciplinary and collaborative work to engage the public. Extraordinarily beautiful and mesmerizing, this piece suggests the value designers can add. And we have come a long way from that Al Gore TED Talk with those very boring looking infographics. Yeah, let's see. How can I fix this? What? I'm just having a bad technology day, folks. It's not working, Bruce. Huh? Thank you, Joyce. It's very finicky here. I hope you go to this website. It's quite beautiful and it's mesmerizing. Mesmerizing. There are all these bird sounds that emerge, and stars come together and form animals. And it's a credit to Lynn that she can do something so beautiful in another format. Maya Lin was an undergraduate when she designed the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and she won this commission over 1,441 other entries. And we professors would do well to remember that she received only a B for her project, and I think we all get it wrong sometimes. And let me use a little morality tale now to shift my focus from defining and illustrating meaningful work to consider what it means to teach students to do meaningful work. Howard Gardner asks a great question. Why is it that the experts primarily teach techniques to young professionals while ignoring the values that have sustained the quests of so many creative geniuses? All right, let me illustrate with a story from my information design class at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. In 2007, at the World Economic Conference at Forum in Davos, Switzerland, the participants talked about the worldwide water crisis and decided that they needed to challenge young people to help them address it in new ways. I almost didn't want to do this project with my students because it's not quite what we did in information design. It was also way too big for a semester, I thought, and I didn't think the students were ready for all that technology that was required. But another cautionary tale to teachers. If you ask the students to take a risk, you have to take a risk too. So I said, okay, we're going to try this. And one of my objectives was to help students develop data collection and analysis skills. And this was for a problem that was largely invisible to them because my students were actually in school on the shores of Lake Michigan, which is one of the Great Lakes, which is the largest body of fresh water in the world. So, early in my class, consulting professor of Vignelli, Mario Miro, asked the students what they knew about the global water problems. And this framed what they didn't know about the water problems. So they could start asking the right questions. Students need to want to learn. So then I grouped the students according to the issues that they had chosen to investigate, not about the people who were friends with each other. And the people who cared about similar issues went forward to solve similar problems. As this project migrated beyond the design skills curriculum, it was clear that I couldn't be the only one to evaluate the work, and including external sources of criticism and user testing was extremely important. And it was not what does the teacher want, but how does this work exhibit professionally recognizable design excellence. So here's one team. It was called the Aqua Independence Team, and they were an unlikely group. Juan Hernandez grew up in a little town in Mexico where there was no running water. Desiree May was a girl from Green Bay and never had a passport. Scott Bednar was changing careers, had a little boy at home, and commuted 2 hours every day for work. And Xavier Ruffin had lived in homeless shelters as a child and had never been on an airplane. So what did they want to do? They wanted to go to Mexico and find out why there was no water in Juan's town. They believed that if you give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. That Chinese proverb was their frame of reference, and they believed that you could not solve a third world problem sitting on the shores of Lake Michigan. Howard Gardner asked a good question, which is, why do the experts primarily teach the techniques while ignoring the values that have sustained the quests of so many creative geniuses? I'm sorry, we've gone. That's right. So the Aqua Independence team sold cupcakes and hot dogs and decided they were going to go to Mexico. And they told all their other teachers that they were leaving, that they were doing field research for a design class, and that they were going to find out if the solution to a problem could exist in the place where the problem existed. And I have to say that all of the teams started to become so involved in this that when I arrived in class at 8 a.m. in the morning, nobody even looked up. They were all working on what they were going to do next. To document this process of listening and reflecting, the Aqua Independence Project team filmed their experience. And hopefully I can show you the film.
So I didn't really know what to expect going into Mexico. We had a lot of work that we wanted to do, a lot of questions that we wanted to ask, a lot of people that we wanted to try and interview. Getting down there was kind of interesting because we didn't really know how it was all going to come together.
Being from Cincingareo, I was aware that there was a water problem. I remember living there and just having water for a few hours a day.
This is the drill, guys. And to flush when you can use the bathroom, you gotta fill up one of these tubs, not tubs, buckets. Go in there and wash your hands manually.
Or just taking a shower whenever you wanted to. Everything had to be prepared. So if you really think about it, it's a very, very primitive system.
¿Te puedo sacar una foto?
This little boy, like, with a bottle of water, trying to, like, just get, like, a little bit of water for himself and his family, and it was bad. It was bad water, too, you could tell. But that kind of caught me off guard, just seeing that. And after that, it just kind of kept escalating with the different people we met and the different things we saw. It really hit home for me.
There's a big miscommunication between the people that are running the system and the people that are paying the bills. And so just to see that difference was very striking to me, and I think that there's a lot that we can probably do for them to help.
These are the energy bills that they're using for the pumps. So this is the money that is coming in. So this was like August, like August 2nd, 2,000 pesos coming in, August 3rd, 4,500, and so on and so on and so on. But these are the costs.
It's just this mentality that they feel like water should be free. And a lot of people cling on to that, and that's the reason why they're not paying.
they're not going to have water in 15 years. You know, the people who are running it are going to have to resign because they're going to be too far in debt. And then nobody's going to pay the electric bill to pump the water. There'll be no water being pumped. There'll be no water coming to town. Hopefully we can help enough to keep everything running.
Juan made a statement to me that I thought was particularly moving, that Joel had told him that just by us being there, it inspired him to hang on a little bit longer in his position. So just to hear something like that makes me feel like the whole trip that we took down there was worth it. You know, everything that we did to get down there was worth it.
It was worth going down there, and it's going to be worth going down there again. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can impact these people in a really positive way and hopefully change their lives. And that's the best thing you can hope for as a designer, to take your work and make it something that is life-changing, not just in Mexico, but around the whole world.
This is really good stuff.
So, we found out that people weren't paying water bills, and they would have cell phones and pay for them. Some people even had TVs and paid for them, but they thought water should be free. So they didn't want to pay for a pump, and there was a sense of entitlement, and it was a sense of things that had gone on for a long, long time. But one of the things that designers do best is try and communicate to people ways that they need to change. So one of the things this team did while they were there was a poster campaign to help educate people about the need to pay their water bills. When they got back to the U.S., the team refined these posters. They designed an interactive educational kiosk with a touch screen and also a slow sand water filtration system. Scott Bednar designed and built an exhibit about water issues called Why Water? And they also prepared funding requests for Badger Meter, which was a company that had water meters, and also for Rotary International. And this team's on-site analysis had immersed them in the town's problems and led to an array of unpredicted solutions. As I tell my students, the solution comes out of doing the problem, not by preconceiving what the solution will be. I like this article that Andrew Blauvelt wrote, and he says that modern design is in its third phase now. He calls it our ethnographic phase. So initially, we had the modernism. There was a formal vocabulary that underscored modernism. He calls the next time frame formal experimentation. And now this phase is emphasizing design's content, symbolism, and narrative potential. He's talking now about the effects of the design being important. And it helps me to stress that successful design solutions have to balance multiple responsibilities. So the responsibility to the designer, and then to our audience, and to the public good. Okay, this is one of my favorite examples of the trend. These are 4 young students at North Carolina State University, and they were outraged by the incidence of sexual assault on college campuses. So, to empower women, they created date rape nail polish. called undercover colors. Women who are wearing it in a bar and then stir a drink with their finger will see the nail polish change color if the drink has been dropped. And this gives a whole new meaning to the words color study. I wanted to give a couple of examples for students here at RIT who have proposed to do meaningful work. Caitlin Redden was advocating for legislation that would support health care for college students. So she proposed that it be installed on the campus bus shelter. It was a prime location for the beneficiaries of that bill. Uyang Wenyu's ethnographic research revealed that newly diagnosed young teens were not served well with information about type 1 diabetes. So she created an age-appropriate animation that lives comfortably on the web and in mobile devices. This is being used by the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, with which she worked closely. And they also vetted her content and helped her to understand her audience. And Bruce Meter's RIT Information Design class produced print materials on medicine and health. And they were shared at a recent International Med Design Conference that was organized by RIT and brought together 4 international schools who were all investigating how design could improve health well-being and the delivery of care. We have an opportunity to make things that are beautiful and relevant and socially responsive. Like Van Gogh's Starry Night, this Dutch bike path uses solar reflective material for lighting. At the intersection of expertise and ethics, I am calling our profession to pursue meaningful work. Under this banner, we can develop designers who create socially relevant design innovations by learning to observe, share, think, and collaborate. In closing, I leave you with this thought from Mark Twain. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the ones that you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. Thank you. I promised that there would have been lots to look at and lots of inspirational material, and I'm happy to also answer any questions. John? Yes? I walk the walk. I'm working with the Rochester Regional Coalition. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll repeat the question. John wanted to know if I was doing any community work right now. And the answer is yes, I walk the walk. I'm working with the Rochester Regional Coalition Against Human Trafficking, and it's an amazing group of women from a number of agencies who are working to change both sex and labor trafficking. And it's means a lot to me. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ann. I think you've given us all a lot of challenge here and some I like to think of Alva Wendell Holmes once commented that a mind stretched never returns to its original shape. And I think you've done some stretching for us today. Thank you. I would just also like to announce that our next Design Conversations lecture will be December 2, and Gary Smith from Herman Miller will be here. So please join us again. Thank you all.